the Valley Current.
Hey, Maxwell, how are you doing?
Good.
Well, I have to say the longest table is a very unique event, and I never saw that many glasses of wine getting poured in my lifetime across what was like 10 tables strung together in St. Petersburg, Florida.
It had to be over a couple hundred people.
Yeah, easily. And I have to say, the service was great and you guys were great. But then I found out about your business because I jokingly said, there's a bunch of people that might even be here that are Medicaid millionaires, like they've planned their affairs legally to basically have a safety net, which is called the Medicaid system. Medicare is different. And you're an actual financial analyst professional that works on various financial plans, right? So tell us more about what you do.
Yeah, so like we were talking about yesterday, I'm a comprehensive financial retirement planner. That's kind of what I go by. Medicare is one of the areas we specialize in. I am an independent agent, so meaning I'm not captive to one Medicare company. So it kind of allows me to get out there and really solve individual problems as opposed to just kind of giving a blanket solution to everyone's issues. And there's a lot of issues with Medicare. So that's a little bit what we do. I have mixed feelings about Medicare, you know. It's a very interesting topic. There's a lot to unpack.
Well, let's unpack it backwards. With where did you grow up, and where'd you go to high school, and then where'd you go to college, and all that jazz? Tell us a little bit about your history.
So I'm born and raised in Massachusetts.
Okay.
New Englander, die hard until I die, and I went to St. John's High School in Shrewsbury. It's a private Catholic school, and then from there I went to the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, women's basketball school. Playing here in Tampa this weekend for the Natty. But from there, I majored in finance and risk management and insurance. So I double majored. And it kind of through my trials and I ended up kind of falling into the insurance world. I had a good teacher and she told me, hey, you could actually double major in this if you take a couple more classes. So I took her up on that.
When did you come to Florida?
I've been here for about 2 years now.
Nice. So did you have to relicense all your stuff from Massachusetts to Florida? Like, what'd you have to do?
No, so actually I'm licensed currently in Florida. That's my home state, but I hold out of state licenses. I have one in Massachusetts. I kind of New England, Maine, the places I go are the places I know people or where I get licensed, South Carolina, and stuff like that. But it's either some are reciprocal, some you have to pay, and then some you have to actually take another classes and stuff like that.
So the general sense of things is in America, we've got kind of this broken healthcare system. I'm going to just be a little bit opinionated about it. I try to stay in good health. I've generally been in good health. I generally take care of myself. Obviously, you can look around and you see a lot of people that are not in good health, particularly in Florida, because they tend to come to Florida because they usually leave New York with some money and then they live their retirement years in Florida and they don't really take care of themselves. So if you go into a place like Advent Healthcare System and you go in the waiting room, and I've done that because I've had some bicycle accidents and stuff like that just were physical situations that needed an x-ray. And you just look around at the people that are there and you say, wow. And most of it is Medicare. Most of it is people that get to an age where Medicare automatically connects. But then there's all sorts of sophisticated stuff you got to deal with respect to what Medicare doesn't cover. But I'm also told that some of those people are there because they have the safety net called Medicaid, which is MEDICAID, which is like the ultimate safety net of you're basically in poverty and the system will still provide for you once you prove out that you don't have certain income, you don't have certain assets. And so I'm kind of curious about when people come to you and they say, well, I want whatever benefits I can get. I worked in America. This was my mom's view. She died in her 90s. And she was like, I worked from age 14. I've worked the last 60, 70 years of my life. I'm entitled to every federal benefit that ever was around. And so she would use whatever medical benefits she had when she felt like using them. If she didn't feel well, she would call 911 and they would pick her up at home and we would try to stop it. And she'd say, don't tell me, I've got my own cell phone. I'm going to the hospital. I don't feel well. In the meantime, she's like saying to me, I'm ready to die. Put the pillow over my head. I've had enough of this life. So I'm kind of curious when people come to you and they say, well, I want to maximize my federal benefits. By the way, she never did that. She never went to a professional. Maybe she should have. But she felt like she had a voice, at least through a 911 call, in getting wheeled, by ambulance into a hospital. So what do you do for them when they come to you and they're in their 70s or 80s or sometimes even 90s? And they want to know, what should I do? How do I maximize my federal benefits?
It's a tough conversation sometimes, so everyone's situation is different and you truly can't, there's no cookie cutter response when people come in. The Medicaid, it's a whole different beast. So it pairs with Medicare. And we call it a dual DSNP plan, a dual special needs plan. You can have Medicare and Medicaid, and there's just different levels that will apply to different people based off of those thresholds, the asset thresholds. In Florida, pretty sure it's around $10,000 in assets and an income of $1,800. If you're below that, you can qualify for Medicaid. There's different levels though. So I have
$1,800 annually.
A month.
$1,800 a month. Oh, so the Social Security check. So let's say they get a Social Security check for $1,800 a month, and they have assets of under $10,000, but they just gifted their house to their kids, right? They gifted their house to their kids, and they say, it's your house now. Maybe you'll let me live here for free. Maybe you won't. It's up to you. I'd like to live here until I die. I don't know how long I have left. But they basically put themselves into a position where their major asset, which is typically their home, is now out of their estate. Now, there's some rule, I think it has to be out of the estate for like more than 5 years or something like that. I mean, I know a little bit about this stuff, not much.
That's when you get into more estate planning. You're allowed to have one house. So if you own your house, in Florida at least, you are allowed, that does not count towards the assets. So you can be on Medicaid.
What if the house is worth $10 million?
Even if it's worth $10 million, you're allowed to own your house.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, that being said, if you get into rental properties and stuff like that, that is pulling you off the Medicaid. We have people who are on that threshold of $1,800 a month. Then there's people making $900 a month. So that's kind of the level. It's between $900 and $1,800 a month. You're generally probably going to be on Medicaid if you don't have the assets. Now, if you have the assets, you can't get that Medicaid. And that puts people kind of in some tough situations where they have to make some tough calls.
They make the call to move the assets into the names of their kids, right? Isn't that what they typically do?
Generally what you'd like to see. Now, they do go off of your tax returns from 2 years prior. So I've ran into cases where people get large sums of money, either inherited or you'll hit the lottery or something. And now this penalizes you in more than just one way because you're paying the taxes. And now your Medicare Part B premium, you could see a spike in that because you're considered a high earner. You enter what we call IRMA. So now instead of paying $185 a month for your Part A and Part B, for your Part B, it's more than that. It can get up to over $500 if you're making crazy enough money. So it leaves some tough choices. And that's why we want to take this holistic view when we work with people. We consult estate planners. We have CPAs. We have financial advisors that we work with in order to kind of build a plan for everyone. Because like I said, everyone's situation is really different,
And there are lawyers that write these estate plans and these trust documents with the idea of maybe assuring that the safety net is available at the lowest price. Because what people worry about is, well, what if I live to 100? And some people do. And some people are even living to 110. They're super centenarians. And they want to make sure the assisted living is free. Free, F-R-E-E. That's probably the most important four-letter word after the nasty one. I mean, that's really what it is.
In some cases, they're coming after your assets in order to pay for those right. And that's what you want to avoid.
Right. So to some degree, what you provide is insight into all of these various rules and regulations that have a financial impact on what might be, if you're in your 60s or 70s, the next 30 or 40 plus years of your life. Because the medical expense can really wipe you out in a big way.
And I'm young. I'm very young. I've only been doing this since I got out of college, and I learn more every day, you know. But I cannot fathom why someone would go do this alone. And when you hit these older ages, 55, 59, when you could start taking money out of your retirement accounts, right? And you turn 65 and you go on the Medicare. I talked to people who, I'm all set. They do want to do it themselves, or they don't want to talk about it at all. To me, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. I mean, I don't know why you would ever, if someone can help you print out a retirement roadmap to get you where you got to go, I would take that all day. And yet some people, they don't know about it, or they're scared to talk about it. And that's kind of what we overcome. You know, that's the everyday battle of trying to help people, kind of bringing that horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, you know.
What about your folks? Did your folks take advice from you on what they did?
My parents are up in Massachusetts. They're not quite Medicare age yet, but we're working on it. We work on their retirement plan every day.
You're working on them right now.
Yeah, it's a constant battle with them. You know, they're probably my toughest clients.
You must see really big differences between people in Florida versus people in Massachusetts, I would think, in their attitude.
Right. You know, the Medicare system in Massachusetts is one of 3 in the United States that kind of doesn't operate on the same plane. They have their own rules, so it's a lot more private, and it's a whole different beast. Florida down here, it's a Medicare Advantage wonderland. You know, they have some of the most amazing policy, like plans you can go on to, but at the same time, that causes some problems in the future, I think. You know, it's a lot of pending legislation and stuff that will come down the pipeline soon, where we have some questions that will need to be answered.
Well, it's an interesting area because most people don't really understand that the United States is 50 different states, and you can have very different experiences on many different topics. Obviously, income taxes is pretty obvious. Sales tax is pretty obvious. Real property tax is pretty obvious. But even the federal Medicare system, as implemented by a state, is like its own unique thing. So when you move, as my folks did from New York, they were like, oh, we think we have a better medical plan than we would get in New York down here in Florida. That was one of the reasons they moved.
New York's a tough one. New York has some great plans. You know, they're real tough to beat.
It's what they decided at the time when they did it. It was 30 years ago. Now they're both deceased. It's probably more than 30 years ago. But they basically decided, we don't like the cold weather. We don't like the high real property taxes. We don't like the income taxes, and we don't like the medical system. So they said, it's beyond 3 strikes and we're out. We're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so they sold their house, and they packed everything up, and they moved to Florida. And they died.
That's what a lot of people do. They love it, you know. In each state, so we had talked about the thresholds for Medicaid. I know in Connecticut, they don't even count your assets. It's a whole different system. They have full-blown millionaires on Medicaid, like you had talked about, and it's just they're able to get these benefits that someone, say in Florida, who is only making X on their Social Security, if they go to Connecticut, they'd be on Medicaid and everything would be paid for. But down here, it's not the case, you know. So it's a tough spot.
Well, I wonder. Like someone recently said to me, I don't know if it's still true, that Alaska will pay you instead of taxing you. They'll give you a check, like uniform basic income, because Alaska has all this oil money, that they get money from, and they actually pay their citizens for remaining residents of Alaska. So I wonder what Alaska does on Medicare and Medicaid. Basically it could be 50 different systems. It's almost like each state is a separate country, and each country gets to sort of dictate, well, this is what, if you're a citizen of our state, it's like being a citizen of another country, except the country is the United States, and the federal taxes is typically what's funding all this stuff, but they let the states implement it. That's really what happens.
It gets implemented different ways. The privatization of Medicare, switching from a majority of Medicare supplement plans. So that used to be the standard. The plan F was the best. Then it went to plan G, and that's standardized by the government. Now what we're starting to see is this migration over to Medicare Advantage. And those are the private insurance companies that the government pays them to have people on the plan. So they're making money when they have someone on the plan, whether the person uses the benefits or not. So We're seeing a lot more of these plans, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm relatively new. I've only been doing this a couple of years now since I got out of college, and it's obviously changed a lot in the last 10 years. I'm excited to see what happens as it changes even more, but it is a peculiar system they have put in place,
Well, tell people how they'll reach you, because you're a very smart guy. You know what you're talking about, and you have time to give personal attention to people, and you got a unique name for your firm. What's it called? Maxwell.
Max Your Retirement.
Max Your Retirement. So it's a great name. You got to trademark that name, and it's Maxwell's your name, right?
Yes, sir.
So tell people how they reach you, both by email and by phone, because you do also pick up the phone, which is a real plus.
Anytime someone calls, I'm going to be there to answer. 774-200-8505. That's my number. Give me a shout. And retirementbymax.com. Anytime, slide me an email, shoot me a call, and if we have some way to help, I'll be there ready to do it.
So this is going to be your first podcast for your firm, probably of many, and your first YouTube. I'll send you the links for both of them. And all of a sudden, your phone's going to be ringing off the hook, and you're going to say, that was the best thing I did when I met that guy at the longest table last night.
That'd be wonderful, Jack.
All right, you take care. We'll get out to lunch sooner or later together. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. You too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.